My name is Marco Di Lenge, and I'm the marketing manager for Central, Southern, and Eastern Europe, based in Frankfurt. So, for us to quickly get started today, I want to give you a couple of technology tips to keep things running smoothly. Firstly, you will be on mute throughout the entire session. And second, should you have any technology issues during this webinar, please note that my email and my mobile phone number are listed on the right side of your screen in the chat box. So just contact me directly for any help. And thirdly, you will hear from me again during the question and answer period at the end of this session. And let me give you one more tip. Crown's Perspectives live webinar has CRP credits available for ERC professional certifications. So if you would like to gain credits, please write down now the session number on the screen. The session is 15030. We will show this number again at the end of this webinar. And now I'm pleased to introduce you to Crown World Mobility's Global Practice Leader for Consulting Services, Lisa Johnson. Lisa has been with Crown for 4.5 years now, and she's responsible for our Perspectives articles, our industry research, for supporting our clients in their mobility policies and program strategies. She's a leader in addressing innovations and shifts impacting our industry. Lisa has been in the global mobility industry for more than 20 years, and she's one of the early thought leaders in the area of assignment-related return on investment and in the talent mobility area. So let me now hand over to Lisa Johnson.
Thank you, Marco, and welcome everybody. Good afternoon. I know many of you who are logged in for our session, but for those who don't know you, as Marco said, my name is Lisa Johnson, and I'm so glad that you've joined us today. This webinar is going to review the upcoming Perspectives article that's going to be released in the next few days. And the topic for this session, as Marco said, and for the article that's coming up, is going to be group moves. And that's a mobility event that happens when, as many of you know, companies move a number of people either to the same place or to different places, but happening at the same time and generated often by the same event. So a lot of times, and the last time that we did a Perspectives live webinar, we were talking about trends and some of the hot topics that are happening in our industry, maybe some shifts that are occurring that tend to be thought of as exciting and innovative. And I'll tell you, group moves is something that's been around for a long time. But it's an important type of event for us to be prepared for at any given time, because often they arise when you least expect them in your organization. So I think it's important for us to cover, yes, innovations and shifts in our industry, but also to talk about things that are critical to anyone working in mobility and how to do it, how to manage it and do it better. So if you're on this session and you know nothing about group moves, I hope that you're going to leave this webinar with a basic understanding and the ability to articulate what it is, a few ways it differs from a normal relocation, why it needs extra planning, and a few different types of support. However, if you, like me, are someone who has managed group moves and organized them for your company once or many times, what I want you to do is to listen and to consider any new information, to think about the group moves that you've been involved in and what made them successful, and perhaps what are things that you could have done differently, and maybe to elevate your own ability to articulate to your team and to your organization, to speak to the topic as a subject matter expert for your global mobility team, and to take your knowledge and experience to another level. So at the end of the day, whether you're a novice or an expert, group moves don't happen every day for most business models. They are often a surprise, and it's always good to have a reminder about a part of our industry that when it happens can be a great opportunity to make a huge difference to your employees, to their families, and to your organization's business goals. All right, I've divided up our session into three main areas. First, I want to give you a little bit of background on the topic of group moves and how they differ from what we would consider a regular relocation. And then we're going to walk through some of the common considerations that go into developing a support plan and the types of support that can be offered. The third area of focus will share some of the common challenges or the pitfalls that we see happen over time with some group moves. And then we're going to end on a high note with some of the success factors for group moves. I'll definitely leave some time at the end for your questions, and as Marco said, we'll open it up with chat, the function at the end of the session. So as we go through, if there are some questions that you have or comments for you to share about your own experiences, something that was really successful for your organization, something you wished you could have done differently, that's a great opportunity to share those as well. So we have a little less than an hour, and I want to just get started with our background and introduction. So why are we talking about group moves today? As I said, it wasn't one of our trends for this year, for sure, but this year, with the Brexit negotiations underway, one key subject that comes up weekly, if not daily, in the media is the question of, will some companies and certain industries leave the UK as a result of this? Will the free flow of people and goods within the EU continue for the UK once the terms are finalized? And we've got a couple of years still of uncertainty that's there as the negotiations occur. And it's causing some companies and industries to think of the different options that they have. Many articles out there are on which European city will be named the next appealing city for finance. Is it going to be Frankfurt or Amsterdam? In addition to that, group moves arise from a number of other business events. They come from mergers and acquisitions that cause the need to join companies and often consolidate facilities or bring together talent. Another example are group moves that come when a company is closing a facility because it's maybe in a location that's now too expensive, or it's no longer a critical location, or when a company is opening a new facility due to expanding business. In some cases, there's a change or reorganization of where business is done. I can remember when I first started in this industry, a U.S. headquarter company that was doing most of its international business in Europe. So lots of moves in between the U.S. and Europe at that time in their headquarters. But with new products that emerged and some of the new technology that was emerging in Asia and some of the lower cost locations, the growth for the company in one given year was 400% in Asia. And so I remember that they suddenly had the need to move their facilities and a lot of their talent into China, to Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Japan over a period of a couple of years. And that was due to just a reorganization of where business was done in the most efficient and effective way. Also, I can remember after 9/11 in New York, the U.S. government mandated that no banking institutions could have all of their business in the same location. So operations functions needed to be outside of Manhattan, and many banks moved their operations teams to other parts of the U.S. to open facilities there. So there are lots of reasons that drive group moves. It's not always one specific situation that will do it. But let's look for a minute at what makes a group move different. That's often the big question. What's the difference between a normal move and a group move? So I want to walk you through a few different unique characteristics that make a group move special and that require companies to treat them differently. First, business needs, individual needs, and group dynamics can really influence how group moves are planned, how they're supported and implemented in ways that are really different to a regular move. And let's be clear, the reason for the move influences the move planning too. Not all group moves are alike, and so there's not one formula to put in place. So for example, a group move due to a facility closing requires different kind of assistance programs than for, say, a headquarters move. A cross-border move has many different variables, starting with just getting immigration going. As we know, for even a regular move, you've got to get that piece started right up front to keep timing going and to get things started. So immigration issues, cultural issues, there are a number of things that are added to a cross-border move. And when you're told about a group move in your organization, I would always just start by really understanding what's the situation that's driving the move. So let's look at some other characteristics. Let's consider this a regular relocation, something that you support most every day. Usually when an employee is asked to go on an international assignment or move to another location, the reason behind the move often includes maybe a job promotion or possible developmental opportunities, the fact that the employee is filling a key talent role. Maybe it's that the person is moving to go into a new business role. But in a group move, most times the employee is told that they need to move or to leave the company. Their job is moving to a new location. Now, there are exceptions, and most often those exceptions are found with, say, a temporary group moves to support a temporary project, or a contract to build, say, a factory in Taiwan, or if you're part of a project team to open a new facility. But typically, a group move is about jobs moving to another location, and that's different from an assignment or even a permanent transfer or new hire relocation for an individual. What are a few more things that make group moves special or different from relocation that we support on most days? In a group move, there are several ways that an employee can be impacted by the business goals of the company. So in some cases, not all employees are going to be asked to move. Some will just be let go or will stay in the same location because their job is not impacted by this move. So say a company was going to open up a new R&D center in another part of Europe. Then maybe employees from R&D functions in different parts of the world or in different parts of the region might be asked to go, but that wouldn't impact every role in the company. In some cases, employees who are not asked to move may be let go, but the company needs them to stay for a period of time for business continuity. In some cases, employees who are asked to move may say, no thanks, I'm not going to move, and decide to leave the company. And that definitely happens. But there are also those employees who say that they're not going to move, and the company says, okay, but we need you to stay for a period of time. Or the company may say, no, you know what, it's fine. But then if you're not going to move, then it's time to go, right? So in a group move, there are all these different scenarios that come into play. I've definitely seen some critical employees, like the head of HR in one case, tell the company that she's not going to move. The company was consolidating several offices in one country into a new location that had more tax benefits and that was just more viable financially and made more sense for the company in terms of where they were in their business. So they're closing a couple of different locations, bringing everyone into one new location, and the head of HR said that she was not going to be able to move for different personal reasons, and the company said, that's fine, but we need you to stay and manage this event for us. The head of HR would be a pretty critical role for that. So they offered her the opportunity to commute in lieu of relocation for a year, and then for that work, they were going to give her extra compensation and an end-of-project bonus. So when there's a critical employee who chooses not to move with the company, that might be a circumstance where you say, all right, but we need you to come on board to help us get this going, to get us through this year, and then we understand your decision not to move. In a group move, often there is this attrition management, and that's definitely a unique attribute to a group move. So a key element is the need to consider the impact of attrition, the attrition group, on the bigger group goals. So the attrition group includes two main groups. One group is made up of the employees the company does not invite to the move, and the other group is made up of employees who invited to the move but choose not to move, but the company wants to retain them for a period of time. So a group move is going to have attrition and retention goals of one kind or another, and managing things to meet those goals will impact the kinds of support and the planning that's required. All right, I want to just cover one more bit of general background before we move into some of the action steps that you can take when you're planning your group move. Ideally, group move planning starts really early, and HR is usually notified. Probably external location specialists come in to help select the site. You know, we find that a lot of times the business leaders for a group move are keeping a lot of things about this move very close to the chest because there's a lot of confidentiality involved when you're not ready to make the announcement. The timing is everything on making that announcement. So if a company is negotiating maybe some tax benefits with a new location or a new lease or doing their site identification and planning, that's not public news that they're necessarily going to want to get out. So that confidentiality can sometimes impede the ability to include the right people far enough in advance to make preparations. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, a little further into our discussion. But lots of preparation needs to be made in advance of the announcement, including the budget. So the employee-related costs are going to be a big part of that budget. Letting employees go costs money. Offering employees incentives and decision-making support to retain the talent that you want to retain will cost money. Relocation, as we know, costs money. And then support activities really have to be ready to go when the move is announced. All right, so hopefully that's a good amount of background to help you see what kinds of business situations can drive a group move and what makes a group move unique. Now I want to just take some time to focus on discussing the actual planning of a group move and what kinds of support activities are considered for a successful group move. So there are many things that you can do in advance and many ways to support group moves, but we've selected what we consider our 7 essential group move support activities. And I want to walk through them quickly, but then I'm going to go into detail on a few of them. So I'm sharing this up front because the activities have to be done in advance of the announcement for the most part. Otherwise, you're not going to have time to put them in place. So a group move specific policy is often needed. We'll talk about it in a minute and go into detail on what makes it different from your regular relocation policy. It certainly can be based on that policy, but there are some specific elements that are often needed. So we'll talk about that in a second. Certainly communication planning is essential. Move decision support activities, so how to make an educated decision based on facts and not assumptions or rumors, how to provide that information for your employees who are part of the impacted population, that's really critical. The fourth one is designing an effective retention program if you need a certain number of employees to move or a certain group of employees. So I've definitely been a part of group moves where there's your A list of people who must go. There's your B list of people who it would be great to go. We'll support them if they want to go, and maybe a C list of people who aren't invited to go. But designing the retention program that the company needs for business continuity is really critical. The fifth step is certainly creating the budget, and that's not fifth in order of importance. That probably is right up at the top. Finding the right partners. And number 7 is preparing your most important support for the move, your managers. So let's just go into detail on a few of these. In terms of meeting group move retention goals, I just want to highlight this as we go into some of the other types of support, because really the retention goals are a critical component along with business continuity and the budget. So when a company wants to plan retention tools and support activities, they have to think about what employee resistance to agreeing to the move might look like, right? So these concerns are probably very familiar to you, I'm sure, because they're often the barriers or concerns in a normal relocation, right? The children's education, dual career couples, extended family responsibilities, the perception of the new location and maybe the distance. So what's different is that with a group move, any of these can get amplified. They all become a much bigger part of that. So if you think that they're challenging for some of your employees in a normal move situation, and remember we talked about what's the motivating factor. If I'm being asked to go on an international assignment or a permanent transfer as an individual, a lot of times there's a job opportunity there, a developmental opportunity or a promotion or something that's deemed a really positive reason for the move. In a group move, this is not always the case. So let me just focus on the new location. The new location considered a step down. You know, you may be asking in many cases for someone to, say, move from London to Swindon, or from New York to North Carolina, or from Delhi to another part of India, from Tokyo to Shizuoka. So a lot of times there's that shift from, say, an urban setting into a suburban or a less cosmopolitan setting in some cases. But also, if extended family is an issue or it's a place you've lived your whole life, on that distance between home and new location, another thing that we've just recently been talking to a company about is short distance moves. And we're not going to go into tons of detail on that today, but that's an interesting scenario because you would think, well, if I'm moving less than 50 miles or 75 kilometers, then that shouldn't be such a big issue. But a short distance move actually can become really complicated and requires its own set of support because you're changing people's commute patterns and distances in getting to work. Maybe it impacts their quality of life, their work-life balance, their children's schools in some cases. So a short distance group move is not something straight up and simple compared to a long distance group move. It has its own set of challenges as well. All right, so these challenges or these barriers, these concerns that you're seeing on your screen all become amplified during a group move. So let's just focus for a second on the policy that might address some of the barriers or concerns that we just looked at. In order to meet retention goals, when you have them, a company will probably have a few things that happen right at the very beginning, at the pre-announcement and at the announcement of the group moves. In order to understand what they need to put in place in terms of a policy, in terms of the support that happens. So on the day of the announcement, often a needs assessment goes out. It's already prepared in advance, and it goes out to all invited employees on the day of the announcement, and we'll ask them a series of questions. And if you've ever been involved in a group move, you know that it's actually a really exciting moment, and there's a lot of adrenaline going because the timing of things has to be really coordinated well for this to happen all on the day of this big announcement. So the needs assessment might be asking a series of questions, starting with, would the employee even consider moving? Do they own their homes? Are they married or single? Dual career? What might prevent them from moving? A number of things, and usually the timeline for that needs assessment is 24 hours so that the company can quickly customize their normal policy, which is a great, you're not going to deviate completely from your normal corporate culture that drives your relocation policy, right? But you are also looking at your business needs and your retention needs. So you look at your normal policy and services, and then you say what needs to be addressed, what issues have come out of the needs assessment. And often it is your external relocation partner who can run those surveys to gather the information as a third party and then collate the data. And part of that is because you're asking employees on the day of the announcement that their job is being impacted about their willingness to even consider the move, and for them to be sharing that with their manager or HR is not always you're not always going to get the answers that you want. So having a third party coordinate that so that the information is collated, but it's not attached to different people's names necessarily, in some cases is really beneficial. All right, so look up at your screen and you see some of the extras that sometimes come up. That extra dependent education support, perhaps extended family assistance, more robust spouse support. We certainly see that as the case. You're asking people who have dual career situations in many instances for both of them to give up their job because of this. So having that robust spouse support assistance is important. Maybe they need more extended living so that the employee can move to the new location. That happens a lot with group moves, especially moving into a new headquarters location where you need people to get there and start moving. But their family wants to wrap things up, whether it's a partner's job or a child's school year. So the extended temporary living might be needed so that the employee can move to the new location while the rest of the family stays behind to, finish up, wrap things up there. Cost of living differences are certainly addressed. Moving to a more expensive location from a less expensive location. How do we deal with that with compensation or with cost of living differentials, for sure. And perhaps they need special financing or a different home sale program. Here's a situation that I've definitely seen in some scenarios where numerous houses come onto the market at the same time in the same small town or in the same location, and that could make home sale really hard. I've seen it actually in one case where the employees were being asked to move from a location which was kind of economically depressed. The housing market was really at a low point, and several people even lived on the same street. So they had to figure out, how are we going to ask employees to put their houses on the market and get them into the new situation where they can start working and manage it. So they really had to come up with creative home sale scenarios and support. Another thing that can happen is limited spaces in the schools in the new location that might impact availability in the new location. So having some of that pre-work that the global mobility team might be working on with your destination service providers or your relocation management companies to really sort out what are the options that we can make available, or just to understand that availability so that you're an informed resource for the employees who are going to be asking those questions. And for assignees, there may be some who, obviously getting visas and immigration issues underway, but there may be some assignees who need repatriation because the location where they're working is closing or their home office is closing. So getting that repatriation underway is really critical. So you can see how your regular relocation policy might need to be adjusted. And let me tell you, a group move policy that's put in place for a specific scenario is time-bound, so it's not going to be available forever. It's time-bound for that decision-making process and for that unique set of employees. It doesn't become your policy forever. It has to have certain parameters put around it so that it's helping to meet your business goals, but it doesn't set precedents for relocation for going forward for all populations. Okay. What else? Let's look at a few other of these planning support activities. I could spend the whole rest of the hour on the importance of communication, but let's just say that the impact of an event that necessitates a group move can have significant consequences on the employee, on their families, of course, on the business, and possibly on the community that they're moving into or out of, or both. So a good communication strategy addresses all aspects of the move, and each in its own time. So the communication strategy should be put in place before the move is announced. And that's the case with any big change initiative, isn't it? I think anytime you debrief a big event in an organization or with a move, or even with your regular mobility program each year when you assess it, one of the things always at the top of the list of things that we could do better is communicate, communicate, communicate. So that certainly is the case in a situation like this where you're creating an environment of uncertainty and ambiguity for different stakeholders, whether it's the employee, the business, or the community. All right, move decision support activities. Making a decision to move in order to retain your job, or when a number of other people are also making the decision at the same time, definitely requires a different approach to providing related information. So a lot of times there's organized trips to the new location, to look-see trips to help you in making that decision. And if you've ever worked on a group move and know what it's like organizing those trips where everyone's arriving within the same day and you're organizing their tours of the new location, they're meeting with destination service providers and real estate agents, or looking for rentals, getting people picked up at the airports and onto buses. It is an exciting event, but it requires it has a lot of moving pieces. Meetings with local area representatives, policy and timeline counseling, and a resource room. So back in the olden days, before most of you were born, the resource room was something that was set up on site. And often I can remember, from our perspective at Crown, you're called in to set up a room that would hold policy information, new location information, maps of the new location, and different school information. All kinds of things are there, including FAQ lists and someone who's available to answer employees' questions. And that resource room would then be open to spouses and partners to come in at different hours during the day to get their information and have their opportunity to get information. Today, virtual resource centers are far more common. That doesn't mean it's not organized. It doesn't mean it doesn't direct people to the information that they need, including those FAQs, including the maps that you want them to see, and the information that's going to help them, that you have put together, that's going to help them make their decision. So it's not just, oh, go do it yourself on the internet, but to put together a virtual resource center. It's much more common. Doesn't mean that the resource rooms don't exist anymore, but we're seeing, of course, with technology that you're able to do it in different ways. And that really makes a difference, especially when you have employees in multiple locations who are impacted, that they can all get the same information in the same way. But any of these move decision support activities need to be in place and planning underway when the move is announced. Because on move day, you're going to want to be able to, on the announcement day, you're going to want to be able to walk people through a timeline and let them know what that support is going to be like, what's going to happen when. Because what you want to do more than anything else is to alleviate whatever pieces of this uncertainty that you can, right? So you want to show that this is well thought out, that there are things in place that are going to be there to support the employees in their decision making. And so that's got to be all set up in advance of the announcement. Another essential support activity that I want to highlight is just finding the right partner. So many aspects of a group move require expertise, lining up the appropriate assistance. The old mantra, you don't know what you don't know, definitely applies here. I can remember the first group move that I ever worked on, and I certainly learned a whole lot, but I wouldn't have wanted to be the only resource on my team or supporting that client. Everyone has to go through their first one, but you need a lot of different expertise there. So whether it's your destination service providers, real estate professionals, group move consultants, relocation management companies, you got to bring in the right resources. And then the final one of this support, planning for the support that you're going to give, that I want to focus on is the managers who are the managers of the impacted population. To me, it's one of the most important elements, and I've seen it work really well, and I've seen it not be handled well. So I want to just take a minute to emphasize this. Managers are the front line of group move communications. So when the announcement is made, employees are going to turn to their managers for direction, for insight, and preparing the manager for that role is key to a successful group move, especially when the manager is considering their own move. So I've definitely seen where companies are going to roll out the move to the managers and their senior people first. So we gather them into a room, get them on a webinar together so that they're aware of all of the things that we just walked through, all the kinds of support that employees are going to get, what's the timeline, who's here, who are external resources to support us during this situation, what's going to happen and when, and what is our, how are we going to handle the questions that come to us as the leaders and as the managers of the impacted population. You want your managers to be on the same page. They don't have to agree with the decision to accept it and be able to speak to it. And this isn't just for a group move. This is for any major change in an organization. But in a group move, it's really critical that you have your managers on board with the same information and knowing what resources are available. And if they are going to be moving, it's great for you to already have their decision to know if they're on board for the move in advance. And as a matter of fact, what's most successful is to really pick the leaders that are going to be making the move with the impacted population, who can be your best recruiters and advocates for getting people to make the decision when you need to retain certain talent to make sure that they're on board with this move, right? You get that person who has that is a natural leader anyway, who is well liked in the organization, who is someone who can gain followers, who's already made the decision. They've been down to the new location or up or over. They know what it's like. They've picked out their housing. They've got their family on board. They will be your biggest cheerleaders, advocates, and recruiting tool that you can have. But one other piece that I think is really key for the managers is, and which often can catch them by surprise, is that from the moment the announcement is made, there is almost always, in any circumstance, a productivity dip for weeks or even months. So if the company or a certain business unit has a big deadline or an initiative that they're running that's separate from the move, they really need to anticipate that distraction of the announcement because it's inevitable. It becomes very distracting when a big change is announced, and it can become really certainly distracting when some people's lives are going to be changing significantly. Even if they're not part of the impacted population, it becomes something that's distracting within the office. And I don't think that business leaders always anticipate that productivity dip. And so I've seen in the managers' meetings pre-announcement, when we talk about that, sort of people looking at each other, thinking about those big deadlines or that big contract that they have that needs to get done in the next few months. And so then they're able to really plan on that. So there on your screen, hopefully, as I've been talking away with some of my experiences with why the managers are a critical piece to prepare in advance, you've seen some of these pieces of the preparation for that manager. We've even done workshops on how to lead through change for managers if it's their first time going through something like this, getting their own knowledge of the new location. They should know if it's a much more expensive location or what's different about this new location and where they're asking their employees to go, even if they themselves are not in part of the impacted population. So that can really make or break the beginning of the move, getting it off on the right foot, and having your managers there. They're a key tool for you in making a group move happen successfully. All right, group move pitfalls. I just want to take a few minutes to go through some of the pitfalls. I bet if you have worked on group moves yourselves, you could make your own list of things that you should have, could have, or would have done differently. And it's really, painful, but it's important. And so hopefully in sharing some of these, it helps you also consider for the next time this happens or for your first group move, what are some things to be able to communicate to your business leaders, to your HR as someone with knowledge about group moves. So there are 6 that I want to cover. I've got 4 right here. On the top there on the left is timing. So in addition to early communication to set everything up, remember that when there's an international move, immigration has to start before everything else right up front because we know that that can often be the piece that slows down a move or can be a barrier to a move, right? The policy there on the right is another one. We've talked a lot about that now. A lot of times companies will assume that their existing policy, whether it's domestic or international, is enough. And as I said, mobility policies for a group move can be, mobility policies in general are designed to meet certain business objectives. So in this case, you're going to want to make sure that the policy that you have in place is adjusted or is going to meet those business needs and objectives that you have for this time-bound event. Research and staffing there on the bottom left. Most HR and mobility teams are going to need support. This is a large-scale event in many cases. There's an intensive timeline, so outside support can really help to present that professional level of services that you need to achieve goals. And then the shortcuts we see over and over again. There are companies that decide we're not going to do that organized event. Why do we need to bring everyone together into one room or on one call in order to explain to them what's going to happen? We can just distribute that individually. But as I said before, when you can hear what someone else is asking about, it might trigger your own questions. In addition to that, knowing that I heard the same thing that you heard, that someone else heard, helps you know that there's transparency in what's happening and that you're getting the right message, that it's not dependent on many, many different people to be able to speak to the same script, right? So organized events are really important for multiple reasons, but they often get skipped, especially when a company has never done a group move before. Or just that belief that the internet will negate the need for giving information and using more of a DIY, do-it-yourself approach. And you really are setting yourself up for more risks, because I might go to a website with alternative facts about a location. You want to be able to guide and direct the information that your employees are getting, because you need them to make an informed decision. And this is part of your own business goals as well, and your support for them. And we'll get to that in just a few minutes in terms of what makes it a move successful, that employee support. All right, the last two in terms of pitfalls that I just wanted to cover, mistakes or that can negatively impact a group move. One is where there is an existing assignee population, and they're underestimating what needs to be done with that population. So imagine I'm in a location, I work in a certain office, it's impacted. I'm able to go to my HR person, to my global mobility representative, or to my manager and ask them about it and, talk to people every day. But if I'm out on an international assignment and I get news of this change and it's going to impact my assignment, which was already a major decision in my family's life to move temporarily for our company, and now I find out that where I'm working is going to be closing, or where we thought of as home will no longer exist in terms of a job waiting. That scenario is often underestimated. So returning home, moving to another country scenario, not focusing on talent retention, or the planning starts too late. And then, as I mentioned before, and only because my immigration team keeps telling me this as I talk about group moves, don't forget to let people know, if you're sending people if it's an overseas move, whether it's temporary or permanent, that immigration has to start way up front. So starting that too late can really be detrimental to an international group move or a cross-border group move. And then cross-functional planning. So remember at the beginning I said that a lot of times the businesses are keeping this information very close to the chest. It's very confidential up front, so they're not including a lot of people in the organization right away. And sometimes they are limiting the information to senior management in the early stages, so the right people are included too late. You've just heard about all of these different types of planning and activities that need to be in place before the announcement is even made. And I don't know how many times I've seen a group move, the announcement comes out, we see an announcement even in the newspaper, and then Global Mobility frequently is one of the last groups to find out about it. So you're scrambling to try to do all the things that could have been done in advance, after the announcement has been made, and that just is not a situation that's going to make a group move successful, especially, or to get off on the right foot, right? So diverse teams are needed. And, you know, it's important for most of you on this call are from your global mobility teams in your organizations to be able to share this information with your HR, with your business partners, if this is something that they are not familiar with, is really important. So there are many different functions that need to be involved in the planning and need to be involved in the early stages. Okay. So now let's focus on something positive here. And I just want to share 4 success factors with you on a group move. So one is, you know, defining what's going to make the group move successful. If the company is able to stay within budget while at the same time meeting their business goals, that's a success factor, right? So if a project team after a group move says, well, we kept to the budget, but we weren't able to retain the team members that we had hoped for, that's not successful. At the end of the day, like any project, it's always important to have clear and measurable goals and to be able to stay within budget while meeting your business objectives, for sure. And you need to have both of those, not just focus on one. The second success factor for a group move, to ensure that the support platform is aligned with the move objectives. So remember, as I started this session, we talked about the fact that many business scenarios can initiate a group move, right? So you've got to make sure that the platform and the kind of support that you're designing is aligned to that situation, whether it's the attrition goals or the overarching objective of the project, the tone that's set, the type of support that's given. So a move for business expansion or maybe a temporary long-term project in a new location because you've gotten a new contract or you're expanding into another part of the world, that's going to look really different from a move of business contraction. A move that provides new opportunities for employees is different from one where, say, an expatriate must find a position back home as a result of facilities closing while they're on the assignment. So there's not a one-size-fits-all formula that's going to align with all business objectives. You want to have your support platform aligned with the move objectives. The third one is minimal business disruptions. So there's I mentioned before that there's that inevitable productivity dip that's linked to group moves, and that's whether it's for the most positive reason or it's something that is incredibly disruptive because of business closing or business contraction. Whatever it is, there's still going to be inevitable productivity dip, right? And it starts at the time of the announcement or the rumors, and that's normal. So the question is, did we plan and set up enough support? Did we manage attrition? Did we manage communication and expectations? Did we provide information to ensure business continuity and really ensuring a smooth transition? And that leads us to the fourth success factor, which is really about the employee experience. And this, to me, is almost most importantly, although a business person would say the budget is too, but most importantly is really that employee experience, and that's key to group move success. So successful group move has engaged employees during and after the move, whether they are deciding to move or to terminate their employment. Whether they are part of the impacted population that's being offered this opportunity to move or being told that they need to move, or your job isn't impacted. There are different kinds of support that you need to offer, whether it's through communication and reassurance or otherwise, to every employee that's impacted in one way or another. It may be different kinds of support, obviously, but making sure that the employee experience is central to what's happening to minimize business disruption, but also to minimize that uncertainty. So I can remember years ago working on a facility closing in Puerto Rico, and some of the employees were being given the opportunity to move, and they were being sent to do look-see visits in other parts of the organization, in other parts of the world, in other countries. and others were being terminated, or just because of their close-knit family and their dual career situations, they were opting not to move. They didn't want to leave Puerto Rico. So part of what we did was to set up an outplacement center where employees and their spouses could go to develop a resume to prepare for a new job search. There were all kinds of support that the company was giving during that group move. And the support a company gives during a group move, it's not just about the employees staying on and deciding to relocate. So that's really critical, and I would definitely work that into your group move planning and not just it's easy to get your head down and to focus on the tactical pieces, but really when you're able to put together a well-defined strategy that has each of these success factors that we've just gone through, as overarching goals, that can really redefine your group move event and situation and make it more successful. All right, we're getting down to the very end here. And before we open up for questions, I just want to share a few quick tips to wrap things up. And my hope is that having reviewed what makes a group move unique and different from an everyday relocation, some of the essential support activities that should be set up prior to a group move announcement, understanding the timing of events and some of the challenges and success factors, I'm hoping that you feel more comfortable with the whole picture. For those of you for whom this is a new discussion in an area that you have never had the opportunity to work on in your organization, I want you to feel informed about what it is when someone mentions it, knowing what that there are resources and lots of information available to you when this does happen. But for those of you who have been through group moves, who know that your organization has a business model that occasionally has these types of events, I think sometimes when you're not in the throes of it and your own either emotions or stress or situation, that it's good to just reflect and think about what could we have done better, what are things that we do really well already that we know about, and you can kind of pat yourself on the back for some of those. But just to be reminded, it's kind of like a fire drill. Let's think about it when we don't need it so that when it happens, we can be better prepared for the next time that this event happens. All right, so just to wrap up, central to any successful group move is that commitment from the top, from senior leaders who set the tone and are involved in the events. That's with any change management initiative in an organization, isn't it? But so it's no different for a group move. Companies need to be prepared to manage the disruption, to address challenges, to bring in experts and outside support, to provide quality communication, to have decision-making support ready and available on the day of the announcement, and to target the support to the overall objectives of the business, especially related to talent retention, attrition, budget, and business continuity. And I think what's important to, and I'll speak for us at Crown, but any relocation company, is to get us involved in the earliest stages of group move planning, your external resources, because when your relocation partner is brought in after a group move is announced, their value, their role is really can be much more limited and focused on more of that logistical, let's scramble to make this work. When they can be a part of it up front, it can make a big difference. And so that's for any relocation partner that you have. Certainly feel like if we can contribute as a strategic partner to help prepare the right services, it can add more strategic value. All right, with that, we have a few minutes here, and Marco, I'm going to hand it back over to you to see if there are any questions that come in. You just use your chat function, send it to the host, and we'll capture those and can go through any comments that you've had about your own experience, something that you find really successful in your organization when these happen that you want to share. We welcome that too. You can read that out loud.
Thank you, Lisa. So again, now it's your turn. As Lisa said, feel free to type your question into the chat function and send it to me, and we will start the conversation.
have to chat at once.
Okay, there's one question that just came in. You talked about the role of the manager. Can you say a little more about why it is so important?
Well, you know, as I mentioned earlier, I just feel like these are the people that the employees are going to turn to get their information. And so the more you can set them up, even with a script to understand what was the business case for making this happen, to get their own, acceptance of it, but also to have them informed so that if I go and say, I'm just not sure, I'm trying to make my decision, they can send your employee to the right. They don't have to know every single thing, but they have to have their heads around, what support the company is offering. They have to be able to speak to the business rationale behind this decision, and to provide support. They're the people your employees probably know the best, right? And certainly they're going to turn to their manager. So I do think that when I've seen this done really well, the manager is set up as a key resource for the organization to meet their business objectives, and that employee, engaging the employee, that employee experience objective. And when they're not prepared, it really creates more of a scenario of uncertainty and disruption to not only business continuity, but to the success of this event. So I just couldn't, I don't always see it handled well, and I just wanted to make sure to emphasize that that's such a key factor in a successful group move.
Okay. I got another question. So first of all, the message, good that you brought up the repatriation to the entity that will be moved. It will be difficult to guide those employees abroad that see their home base disappear. And the question is, how would you do this?
In 30 seconds or less. Well, so let's think about it in terms of what we know as global mobility professionals, because we know that this kind of thing could happen to an individual at any time. More and more frequently, employees are not going back to their home office because our businesses are organic, they're fluid, and what was a key location when an employee goes out on an international assignment is not always the case coming back. So it's not necessarily only a unique circumstance for a group move. So I think we can look at our own knowledge of how this could be handled anyway, and then apply it to the group move situation. So it's a matter of communication with that employee of how the organization is changing. It's a matter of looking at viable options for giving them the choice that they can repatriate to their home location but not have a job waiting for them, or here are the ways that we can look for another opportunity for you in advance. Now, with a group move pre-announcement, that would be the due diligence that the Global Mobility team and HR and the business leaders would look at. Is this a person we want to retain? Are there options for where they could go upon repatriation as a result of this? Let's look at those options in advance so that when we make the announcement, we're giving that employee those options. And that often is missing in these group move situations because you're not thinking about it. So I have seen companies do this very well, whether it's in an acquisition where they're acquiring expats and they need to transition them onto the new policy because they are the acquiring company, and they will choose. Here's a great example. This just happened last year. The company chose to use their most robust policy for all of the impacted population to make sure that that employee experience was going to be at its best no matter what decision was made for that employee. So they're acquiring new talent. They want them to stay if possible. They want them to make decisions. And they said, we're not going to shortcut this for anybody. We're going to make sure that they get all the support that we would give to in our most robust policy because the experience is really critical. So it's a matter of planning in advance, knowing what options are viable for that employee, for either returning and having them leave the company, or saying, here are some other options for you. We could see you working in other parts of our organization, and here's what it means. I think it's more preparing in advance than anything else for that. And they may still choose to repatriate because they want to go back home to where they own a home maybe, where their family is, and that's their choice. But you're ready for that and know what the options are. I think we're at the top of the hour, Marco.
Yes, okay. We are at the end of this Perspectives live session. And yeah, I hope that you have enjoyed it. Our Group Moves topic gives us a lot to consider. And remember, you can receive CRP credits for the ERC certificate, and the number is 15030. Our Perspectives articles are posted on the Crown World Mobility website, and all of you on today's webinar will receive one when it is launched next week. And you will also receive a feedback form, so just let us know what you think and what additional questions you have on today's session, and any additional topics that you would like to see us covering. Thanks so much for attending, and big thanks to my colleague, Lisa Johnson.
Thank you, Marco. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.